we'll just give a quick, talking about the discussion is about how old is the world? Okay? So let's just go back a little bit. The Kuzari, the king, he wants to understand what is the true way to serve God. How do you serve God? Because he was doing sacrifices, and God said, I don't want your sacrifices. Your intentions are wanted, but your actions are not wanted. So he has to find what is the actions that God wants. So he started with the philosopher, and the philosopher says, God doesn't want any actions. God doesn't care about you. God's not interested in you. And religion is good just to, you can invent a religion if it helps you. But God doesn't hear your prayers. He doesn't care about you. He's way beyond everything. He didn't like that answer because he felt inside that God wants something. God said, I don't want this. I want this. So God wants something. And if you look at the humanity, you see that the big numbers of the Christians and the Muslims, they believe that not only do they believe God wants you to do something, they're willing to die for it. They're willing to kill for it. So there's a very strong passion of the people believe they're doing the will of God. And this is something that's very powerful. It's not just, okay, invent a religion if you want. All religions are good. You have a good religion. You have a religion. No, the people that believe in religion believe that they're doing the will of God. They say this is the only way. And they're willing to die for it and kill for it. Now, the king didn't even think of going to the Jew. Because the Jews are scattered around the world. And he didn't think there was anything to really even discuss. But when he talked to the Christian, and the Christian says, we believe in everything that happened to the Jewish people. It's all true. It happened in front of masses of people. It repeated itself over and over. It's something that was proven. There's no doubts about it. Everything that happened to the Jewish people is real. And then comes along, but then it stopped. Because one person, which is Yeshki, one person came and said, it stopped. Now it's something new. And he said, wait, and what the Christian spoke was so crazy. You have to believe that a woman gave birth without a husband, and the baby that was born was God. It looked like a person, but it was really God. It looked like a prophet, but it was really God, and the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. The king is a thinker person. He's a. You're telling me, the Christian is telling me, I have to sacrifice my common sense in order to be a Christian. I have to sacrifice my sense. Things that seem, you want me to believe in something that completely can't make sense in reality. So then he goes to the Muslim, and the Muslim also says, everything that happened to Jewish people, God created the world, and everything that happened to Jewish people in the desert, and everyone comes from Adam and from Noah, the whole story of the Bible. Everything's true. But then an angel came to Muhammad and told him all these things, and that's it, everything ended. Whoa. How something that is so powerful and so real, and suddenly one person had some kind of revelation from, and that's everything ends, like because of one guy. I understand, I can't even really believe that there's such a thing, God communicates with people. That's hard for me to understand. But the fact that it ended with this whole story, everyone agrees on, and masses of people saw it, and it was all true. And then one guy had this revelation. I don't get it. It doesn't fit right. Everybody's pointing back, the Christian, the Muslim, the big numbers of the religions in the world are pointing back to the Jew. They're saying that's the truth, that's the source, and that's real. But then it ended. So he calls the Jew. And he says, tell me about your belief. Right? The Jews are scattered already 1,000 years in exile. This is 1,000 years ago we're talking about. And the Jew begins. And he starts telling him, I believe in God, who chose Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then took the Jewish people out of Egypt and brought them to the land of Israel and gave them the Torah. And the king says, whoa, where's the whole world? Where's the universalism? God chose the Jewish people. And then it's only for you. The Torah is only for you. And it doesn't apply to anybody else. And where's God that created the world? Where's the creator? If it's the creator, then it belongs to everybody. No. God gave us the Torah because he took us out of Egypt. Not because he created us. Because if God, but why don't you talk to me about the creator of the world. Talk to me about, that you want to be like God, who's compassionate, and you want to be compassionate. He gives you food, and therefore you're grateful, and you want to be, God is righteous, and therefore you got to be righteous. That's the way you talk. That's interesting. That's right. He says, no. You have to allow me to explain it. I understand it's not simple. And then you're saying, wait. So God needed a nation, and he chose the Jewish nation. He needed a nation. He wanted to work through a nation, and he needed a nation, and he chose the nation of Israel. So theoretically, what you're saying is that God, if he needed a nation and he happened to choose the Jewish people, so he could also change the Jewish people with another nation. Like the Christians said, God chose you. You sinned. Now he chose us. So then the Kuzari says, no, let me explain to you. Now, why you explain, when I tell you, tell me about God. Why does the rabbi not say, I believe in God who created the world and created Adam? The whole story of, even the Torah starts off with, Bereshit bara Elohim, God in the beginning created the world, and then he created Adam, and then why does the rabbi, the first opening statement, tell me about what it is being a Jew? And you tell me about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Where is God, the big God? And so the rabbi says, listen, I, as a Jew, I'm not a revolutionary. I don't invent anything. I'm not an innovator. I'm not creating new things. I'm a simple student to my rabbis. My rabbi was Moshe Rabbeinu. And when Moshe Rabbeinu came to Paro, he didn't say, hi, I'm the God who created the world. He said, Elohim, Elohei Ivriim, Shnachali Alecha. The God of the Hebrews, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and Jacob, sent me to you. So that's how Moses started his conversation. So history repeats itself. Moshe Rabbeinu came to Paro, the empire of the world, and he came and he taught him some lessons in godliness that began with him talking about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Obviously, that's how I have to start. The same way he came to a king, I'm coming to a king, and I'm just a simple student. I just do what my rabbis did. And you know where Moshe Rabbeinu learned that from? Moshe Rabbeinu also learned it from God. Because when God revealed himself on Mount Sinai, even though it's later, but God did the same thing. God, you'd expect that when God comes to talk to the Jewish people, for the first time, God is making an appearance to mankind, to millions of people. What would you expect God would say? I'm the creator of the world. I created you, therefore you should do this and this. No. Anochi Hashem Elohecha asher hotzaticha me'eretz Mitzrayim. The first words that God said was, I am God who took you out of Egypt. He didn't say, I'm God who created you and created the world. Therefore we understand that this is what you need to know. This is the way to teach it. So the king is like in shock. Okay, so I guess the Torah is only for you. You guys are racist, chauvinist. You think the whole world revolves around you, and it's only for you. Right? It's true. We're the only religion different than Christians, Muslims, who are missionaries. They believe everyone has to be Christian. Everyone has to be Muslims. We're the only ones that say, no, you have to be who you are. I have to be who I am. There's a friend of mine. It's a crazy story. I'm walking. My parents-in-law, they live in Canada. And during Corona, they bought a house up in the mountains, way, way, way out in the middle of nowhere. There's just mountains. And here and there is a little cabin. I'm walking in the forest in Canada, a place called Saint Sever. And there is this huge guy walks out, like he looks like a motorcycle, like a huge guy. And he says to me, Shalom Aleichem. Everybody there speaks French. Even if you talk to somebody in English, they won't answer you. Because like, how dare you speak, English. The guy tells me, Shalom Aleichem. So I say, what's your story? And he says, I was a Jehovah's Witness. And one day, on the internet, popped up a class of Tuvia Singer, Rabbi Tuvia Singer. I heard a class of his, and another class of his, and I realized my whole life was a lie. So I said, what do I do now? I have to become Jewish. So I went looking for a rabbi. I came to the rabbi, I said, I realized my whole life was a lie. Everything I did was wrong, and I wanna do tshuva. Do I have to convert? The rabbi said, no. All you got to do is keep the 7 mitzvot of Bnei Noach. And he said, whew, thank God. I was worried. That's what he does. He has a special siddur they got him that's like the 7 mitzvot of Bnei Noach, and he's like incredible. So we don't realize that as Jews, we have no interest in missionizing the world, converting the world, conquering the world, that everyone should be Jewish. You want to come, we say it's hard, it's difficult, there's, pogroms, there's the Holocaust, there's like, maybe rethink it. Don't jump into becoming Jewish. Yeah, right now it's a good time, but there's the Gog and Magog war coming, and it's maybe enjoy your life. You don't have to take on such a challenge. So you're saying, so the rabbi, the king expects that when he says to him, listen, the Torah is only for you. He expects that the rabbi says, no, we're universal. It's for everybody. It's only for us. What? If you want to join in, you want to convert, or if you live in Israel and you abide by the laws, ger toshav, you could also get from the blessings, but the Torah is only for us. And the king is really upset. And he says, I don't get it. The rabbi says, if you let me explain, I need to give you some introductions. There's some foundations you need to have to understand this concept of the Jewish people. Especially because we're saying, so God needed a nation, He chose a Jewish nation, so it just happened to be us now, and it could be somebody else. No. There's a new concept called Sgulat Yisrael. There's a torch. There's a flame that was handed to Adam HaRishon. And that was handed down from Adam to certain individuals. Sometimes it skipped generations. It's not like that torch didn't have to go father to son. It could even skip a few generations. So you had Shem, he got the torch. And then it went on to different, right, Noach, and then Avram Avinu, and then Yitzchak, and then something happened. Yaakov, suddenly, the torch, the Sgula, what we call, suddenly became a family. 12 tribes. Every one of those tribes is part of the chosen people. The Sgula. And we'll explain what it is in a minute. And that's why the tribes didn't understand this, because it was the first time. And until the tribes, there was something called Pri, there was the fruit, and there was the peel. There were people that were the peel, and there were people that were the fruit. Esav was the peel. And then there was the fruit, the essence. And the same, and that's why. And by the way, the peel is not bad. The peel protects the fruit. There's some peels that you can eat for like grapes. You can eat the peels. The peels have a job. But they're not the fruit. It's not the purpose. And that's the Jewish people. There were people that were fruit people, and there were people that were the peel. And that's why the brothers were confused, because through all the generations, there was people that were the fruit and people that were peels. And suddenly you have 12 tribes, and Yosef is very different. He's similar to Esav. He's involved in the physical world. He's beautiful. He's got his clothing, and he seems like he's the peel guy. They want to throw him out. They didn't know. No, now it changed. Now everybody is inside. And from that 12 tribes became the Jewish people. So the Jewish people are not some type of nation that God happened to choose. It was a slow, what we call the word it's evolution, that began from Adam, and these are the Jewish people. So this is not a side thing. This is not a coincidence or it's a choice that God created the Jewish nation. Okay, so the king is still very shocked, but he says, I'll explain to you very slowly. Let me explain it slowly. Okay, go ahead. Let's say, do you agree with me that a stone and a plant are two separate things? Yes, the plant contains an aspect of the stone, the minerals, whatever it is, but it's something new. The plant has something that is called a sgula. The word sgula means an inherent value, something unique. There's something unique in plants that don't exist in stones. What is that? They can grow, they can procreate, right? They reproduce, they expand. A stone will never grow. It's what it is, and that's it. Limited. And then he says, okay, I agree. Yes, it's completely a new thing. Do you agree that an animal is not an advanced plant? An animal has a personality. An animal has a soul. It has life in it. It has emotions. It has a nefesh. Yes, I agree. It's something different. Okay. Do you agree that the person is not an advanced animal? A human being. You expect of a human being to create, to develop, work on themselves, to build a family, to build a country and a community and a state and run a country and have morals. You agree that you don't expect that from an animal? True. So it's a sgula. It's an inherent value. Being a human being is not a human animal. It's a human being. I agree. What would be, so now we know we have 4 levels of creation: stones, plants, animals, humans. What would be the 5th creation? The rabbi asked the king, what would be the 5th new creation? And the rabbi says, a genius. A genius is someone that, how could they do it? Remember books by heart and like have a mind that's, the rabbi says, no. A table is a piece of wood with 4 legs. How about a marble table, stone table with 3 legs? Is that a table also? Yes, that's all it is. A smart person and a stupid person are still people. There's no difference it's not a new creation. But what would be a new creation? The king says, I don't know. If I told you there was somebody who could walk into fire and nothing happens to him. He could not eat, not sleep for 40 days. And not only what happens when you don't eat and you don't drink, you become weak and, right? This person opposite, his face starts to beam. He's full of energy, full of light. He's so full of light that you can't even look at his face. He has to put a mask. And this person knows exactly when he's going to die. And when he dies, he just says, he goes lie down like he's going to sleep. at a known time, a known thing, and he lies down, goes to sleep, and he dies. And this person knows everything that happened in the past and everything that's going to happen in the future, and he tells you everything is going to happen. Would you agree that this is now like a fifth creation? The king says, if that exists, 100%. That's like an angel. That's that. He never gets sick. He doesn't eat, right? How could this be? Who's he talking about? Moshe Rabbeinu. But who is he really talking about? The Jewish people. The Jewish people are the people that Moshe Rabbeinu is one of the Jewish people that maximized the potential of what a Jewish nation is. But as a nation, this is who we are. I skipped one thing where he tried to explain. I don't know if I'm going to go back there because it's going to be a long thing, but that's Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's who we are. Moshe Rabbeinu is an example of who we are, and he maximized the potential. I should go back to give the example because I missed one of the. So the rabbi says to the king, if you want me to explain to you to understand it, why I mentioned to you God who took us out of Egypt and not God who created the world, is because if I would tell you there's a king, he's amazing. There's a king, is amazing. The people that live in his country, they're honest and they're good people and and the country runs so beautifully. Would you now praise that king? And the king says, definitely not. Maybe there's no king. Maybe the people are good just because of themselves. Why should I praise the king? Question one. Question two. If you had a delegation of the king come to you, and they brought you gifts, they brought you medications that make your whole kingdom healthy. Not only do they make you healthy, they make it that you never get sick. Sorry. And they brought you weapons that you can destroy all your enemies without going to war. And he gave you a letter that explains, that's addressed to you, and explains how he runs his country. Now if I asked you, tell me about the king, what would you answer me? He said, if I said, tell me about this king you met, what would you answer? First of all, so what is he talking about? Who is this king that met the people and gave them these weapons to destroy their enemies, gave them medications that make them healthy and cure their sicknesses and right? Who is this king? The Jewish people. The Jewish people met God. And when we met God, he gave us the medications that we live forever. The Jewish nation is the only nation that since it began 3,000 and something years ago, we're still alive. All the other nations, like a human being, there's a pasuk that says, Netzach Yisrael lo yinachem v'lo yishaker, ki lo adam lo yinachem. The eternity of Israel will live forever because they're not like a person. They're not a human being. In other words, other nations are like human beings. It's very healthy and normal for a nation to come onto the stage of history, do their job, and leave. We see the cycle of nations that arrive and disappear. Thousands of nations have been and are no longer around. The Romans, the Greeks, that's number one. Number two, any nation who came against us was destroyed. Pharaoh, Titus, Nebuchadnezzar, whoever comes up against the Jewish nation, and we fight them without weapons. They're gone, we continue. So he says, now if I'd ask you, tell me, who is your God? Who is that king? What would you say? The king gave me these gifts. I met his people. I have his letter. I can see in the letter that he wrote me, whether he's smart or not. I can learn from it. I'm not going to talk to you about things that I don't know. The creation of the world, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. But I'm only telling you things that apply to me, things that are reality. The reality is that God, who created the world, God took me out of Egypt. And that's what I know about him. I know he took me out of Egypt. I know he gave me the Torah. I know he took me to the desert. I know he brought me to the land of Israel. I know. This is what I know. I'm only telling you what I know. I'm not talking speculations. I'm not inventing things about God that maybe this is God, maybe that's God. No, I only know what God told me and what I experienced firsthand. That's what I talk about. I don't talk speculations. Okay, so then we mentioned, he says, so this is a little bit of who our prophet was. And he goes back to, what does it mean to be the fifth level of creation is the Jewish nation. And the person that expresses that is Moshe Rabbeinu. So he says, these are a little bit of expressing. We're now reading Mem Gimel, which is 43 in the, right? So he mentioned, and these are little things about a prophet. A little bit about a prophet. What I told you, that he can walk into fire, and he doesn't need to eat or drink for 40 days and 40 nights, and he knows the past and the future. He said these are a little bit about the expressions of our prophet. You found it, 43. These are only a little bit of the definitions or the descriptions of our prophet. There's no disagreement about Moshe Rabbeinu that he existed. As we said, even the Christians and the Muslims all agreed. And through him was seen that God connects to the Jewish people through him, and that they have a God who is guiding them according to his will, according to God's will, and according to the work that he wants. And if we go against him, we go against the work, so we have repercussions. And he told them, Hane'elam. He told us what nobody could know. Moshe Rabbeinu, the prophet, told us the concealed, the hidden, the things that cannot be known. He told us the secret of how God created the world. That's something that a human being can't know. He told us how God created the world. He told us the lineage, the people, the lineage of the people before the flood. So think about it. There was a flood, and he goes back and tells us exactly the lineage of the names of the people and the families and before the flood. Because think about it, till the flood. Let's say maybe people would know something from the flood and on, but here the whole world was wiped out, and he tells us everything happened before the flood. And how everybody goes back, what's it called, the tree of genealogy, back to Adam, the first human being. And how why it happened and how the flood happened. What was the how do you say, the cause or the build-up to the flood. And how the 70 nations go back to the lineage of Shem, Chav, and Yafet. How the three children of Noach became the 70 nations. And how languages were created. How did the 70 languages start? We know from the Tower of Babel. Where they lived. How were the different trades created? The Torah talks about Yuval, Avi kol tofes ugav. Yuval was the first person who created the music instrument, the father of musical instruments, and Tubal Cain, who created the first metal instruments, the metal tools, and so on. The Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu, through the Torah, gave us the whole history. Moshe Rabbeinu, how it all happened. Ubinyan Medina, how the different countries and cities were built. U'shnei ha'olam me'adam ve'adata. And the years from that the world was created, from Adam until now. So this is what the rabbi tells the king. The king now says, wait, Gam ze tameha. Im yesh letzechem inyan barur b'riat ha'olam. After he mentioned the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? We've been talking about that till now. So he says, I'm really surprised. I'm interested to know. Do you have a clear calculation of when the world was created? Right? We said, so from all the things we spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu, we said a lot of things about him. The one thing that the king is interested in knowing about is the concept of Moshe Rabbeinu being a historian. Because Moshe Rabbeinu, he's an historian who rewrote all of history from the beginning of the first human being. And the rabbi answers, not only do we have an exact calculation, right? Obviously, yes, we have a calculation. Ve'en ben hayudim bazeh machloket mehodu ve'ad kush. There is no disagreement in the calculation of the years we count. There is no disagreement from the Jews from one corner of the world until the other corner of the world. And this is shocking. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu have to tell us the whole past of the creation? Because the Jewish people are now coming into the world. And the world was created for the Jewish people. So we have to rewrite all of history and explain how everything built up and everything happened was for this nation to be able to come in. And that's why that was the time that now everything has to be rewritten. All of history has to be told with the understanding that this was the focus, the Jewish nation. So the king says, well, how many years do you calculate now? Kama atem monim hayom. The rabbi said, now when this story happened between the king and the rabbi, this was year 4,500 to the creation of the world. Now we're in 5,784. But when this story happened with the king and the rabbi, it was year 4,500. And then he explains what I told you before, how, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but how the idea of the fruit he explained it how from Adam and Shet and Enosh and Noach and Shem and Ever, these were the people that were holding this Gula, this fifth element of creation. These are the people that had it, and it went to the family. And the king is shocked. King says, wow. Now we're in 48. Amar Kuzari. Ze haprat marchik hamachshava ra'a min halev me'akaza ve'askama. This type of precise information, it's a proof that this is not a lie. How could everybody agree? Right? Like it's something that could be tested. You're talking about history, you're talking about amount of years. How could it be that everybody agrees on this? This shows that it's true. There's no such a thing of 10 people agreeing on the same thing. And here you're saying every one of the Jewish people from one corner of the world to the other agree. Right? And obviously somebody would have said it's a lie. Somebody would have, these are things that could be cross-referenced about, you're talking about names of nations, and you're talking about who invented what. Then you're talking about, all these information. There's also cross-references of different nations, and, we're talking about the history of the world. He says, wow, I can't believe it. This can't be a lie. This can't be a lie. This is a proof that, and the rabbi says, yeah, not only that, Avram Avinu, he was there in they called the generation of separation. Dora Palaga was the generation of separation where Avram Avinu, so we're saying the whole world comes from a united place, and that is Adam. Everybody that we know, all of the human beings that we know, come from Adam. Yes, there was human beings before Adam. The Midrash says there's caves where you see they made paintings, and in you can go to France, there's paintings that were painted 30,000 years ago. People painted, guys running with a spear and hunting. There was people. Those people were what we call human animals. But the first human being that was moral, that was human, that could talk, that maybe, I guess that could be moral, that could be a human being that we know of, different than an animal, was Adam, the fourth creation. Maybe there was evolution until then, different types of people, but the first person that we know who was godly was Adam. And Adam spoke Hebrew. And Adam, his child, Shem, had a child, Ever. And Ever spoke Ivrit. The word Ever, Ivri, is from Ever. He spoke the language of his father. And that's why it's called Ivrit. Okay? So Avram spoke the language of his father, Ever, of his grandfather. His grandfather. Right? He held on to this skula of Adam Arishon. The skula, he held on to the torch of this what we call the skula of people. And therefore, and then when Moshe Rabbeinu came 400 years later, after Adam, right? And he came to a nation. They were very, very advanced intellectually. We're talking about people that the wisdom of Egypt, there's things that till today we don't know how they did it. They were very, very wise. And he came to the wise people and the Jewish people were also very wise. They weren't people that you could just, like you think of some primitive paganist type of people, chas v'shalom. These were people that were thinkers. These were people and they didn't believe that it's such a thing that God communicates with human beings. They didn't believe it until they saw. They didn't believe in Moshe Rabbeinu till they saw themselves the Mount Sinai, the Ten Commandments. Until they saw that, they didn't believe it. Okay, because we're called the stiff-necked people. We don't believe things until we are convinced. We don't believe anything. They didn't believe Moshe Rabbeinu, even though he did the 10 plagues, even though he split the sea. Everything was great. But they still didn't believe him until the moment of the 10 Commandments where they saw God speaking to them and speaking to him, and they themselves experienced it. Right? We're talking about... So... And therefore, and Moshe Rabbeinu, a person could lie about something that happens 500 years. Like in a period of 500 years, you can't make up history, even in a period of 500 years. So everything that happened with Avram, and then Moshe Rabbeinu came 400 years later, and everything that he said worked, which was in line with what Avram Avinu said, and the history that we have. Everything is truth. So, therefore, he says, someone would have said it's a lie, but obviously no one did. Therefore, the Kuzari says these are powerful. Everything you're saying till now is very powerful. It's convincing. It's powerful. It's undisputable. It's things that can be proven. History is not something you can make up. There's cross references. There's people that could say it's a lie. History is facts. So the king says, yes, everything you said till now is very powerful. Now the king is going to go, the rabbi is going to explain to the king another 3 points that really solidify this concept of that everything goes back to a oneness of humanity. And that's Adam Arishon. There's 3 proofs. In other words, God left there is 3 facts that are proofs that are left within creation that point back to a one where everything started with a united place, which is Adam, speaking one language, which is Ivrit, which is Hebrew. And what is that? 3 concepts. The languages, the way we count 10. Everybody uses the numbers 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which shows that the world is counting by the 10 sayings that the God created the world with, the 10 plagues, the 10 commandments, and the number 7. Why does the whole world count a 7-day week? Yes, here and there, there's people that don't, but 99.9% of humanity count by a 7-day week. Where does that come from? So there's these hidden gems that prove the counting and the languages. Right? He said, where do languages come from? How do languages start? And the king says, I don't know. It's not something people agree on. It came from above. There was the Tower of Babel, and this was in the time of Avram Avinu. People decided to rebel against God. And in order to not let that happen, God created the 70 languages. And suddenly, overnight, there were 70 different languages. We don't see that there was languages beforehand. This was where it happened. This is where they're created. So, he says, very interesting. And that brings us back to the first language. And the weekday, and then, right, why does the world count? So we see that everything goes back to this point of oneness. So now the king says to the rabbi, okay, so you're saying, now it's very important to see the language. When he asked him, so you're saying, so do you have a count? Do you have a count of the world, how long the world is? And he says, yes, we count 4,500 years ago. Okay, right? We count 405 years ago from Adam. When we say 4,500 years, now what about the world being billions of years old? That's not important to us. History, a world without a human being that is moral, without a human being who is there to uplift the world, there to make the world better, it's insignificant to us, the times. When we count 4,500 years or 5,784 years, we're counting from the first moral human being. The first human being that had Adam and Eve. They had a connection with God. They communicated with God. They were prophets. They were above prophets. They were walking in the Garden of Eden with God, right? God's Spirit in the Garden of Eden. We can't understand what this means. But that's where we start. So what about the argument of how many years is the world? And that's what we're going to go into now. A very deep discussion on whether the world always existed, which is what Aristotle says and Plato say, that material always existed. The world always existed. And we say God created the world. And this concept of God created the world or the world always existed is very, very crucial in our faith. Do you believe that God created the world? Or do you believe the world always existed? Is there something more powerful than God? Because if the world always existed, then there's something that isn't before God. And then there's God that interfered. And this is a very deep discussion, a very important discussion on how, and it has an application on how we live our life. Is the materialistic in this world more powerful than you? More powerful than the soul? More powerful than, is it just something that is how do you say, been forever? And you can't overcome it? Or you can? So, like we said, what the king is, so there's different discussions on how old is the world. Okay, so maybe every day we say that the world is, God created the world 7 days. Rosh Hashanah was the day that Adam was created. So 7 days before that, God started creating the world. First of all, how could you calculate days if there's no sun and the moon? We calculate days based on the sun. The sun was only created on the 4th day. So how do you count? What is 1 day? So 1 day could be 1 billion years, 10 billion years every day. Okay, that's not important. That's not, what it means 1 day. God created the world in 6 days. The 7th day he rested, and then the 6th day, at the end of the 6th day, created Adam and Eve. But this is a very important question that has very strong implications on our belief and our understanding of the world. Our connection to God is very, very important. This information, and that's what we go into. We're going to go into this next week. First, so the king says, yeah, but there's people in India that they say the world is hundreds of thousands of years old. So he says, okay, well, those people in India, they have no proof. They have all kinds of beliefs in, like, it's all kinds of imaginary stories of demons and dragons and all kinds of things that, these people, they have no real literature. There's no real information. There's no, you're talking about people that were, imaginary people. Like, it's not even a discussion. There's nothing scientific. There's nothing, there's nothing no one to talk to there. And the king says, okay, you know what? I agree with you that. But what will you say about Aristotle? Oh, this is already, the philosophers were deep thinkers. They brought proofs. They brought, it was scientifically tested. They were very smart. What do you say about them? Now, the philosopher is not just going to blow off. Now we're going to go into a very deep discussion with Aristotle to try to understand where he's right, where he's wrong. This is not, you don't just blow off a philosopher who is very, very intellectually advanced. And that's what we're talking about, the creation of the world. Because the Aristotle said the world, so he says, fine, I agree, you blew me off with the Indians who were, belief in all kinds of old wife tales and hocus pocus things. But what will you say with the philosophers, Aristotle, who brought research and proof, and they agreed that the world always existed. All right? And not only did it only exist, they don't say the world is hundreds of thousands of years or billions of years old. They say the world always existed, has no beginning. It has no beginning and no end, no purpose. So that's next week. We're going to talk about that because that's a very big question. And it's a good question, and it has to be, we take them seriously. We have a serious discussion with them. So next week we'll continue that. God's help. Thank you. You can press stop there. Yeah.